Willie Pegram was senselessly murdered in the Lowe's parking lot.
And still, I deal with that thing.
What we're looking for is that magic phone call for somebody to call in and say, hey, this is what I saw, this is whom I saw, and this is the information that I need to give you.
Every year, crimes go unsolved here in Southern California, and loved ones are left waiting. I'm Joy Benedict. As a news reporter, I've covered countless crimes, countless homicides, and I know that sometimes the victims of those crimes are forgotten almost as quickly as the headlines fade. So tonight, on Crime Stoppers Case Files, we take another look at the crimes still lingering unsolved in our community. Let's get right to work. It's September 26, 2004. 20-year-old Willie Pegram is preparing to go to college. Although he usually stayed home, he headed out with a group of friends cruising up and down the streets of Hawthorne. But Willie never came home. He was shot and killed, and investigators call it mistaken identity. Here is his story.
With me being the youngest, I would have to say I just remember him like always looking out for me. He was like a protector. He didn't let nothing happen to me.
He was like a trendsetter to all the rest of the kids in the family because I have 5 daughters and 1 son. So they used to always look up to him as what is little Willie doing. So he had a lot of pressure on him to do the right thing, say the right thing, be a good example.
It's a story that I remember, I think about a lot because he was really a good son. He was in an accident. He called home, he said, Dad, it wasn't my fault. And the person that he was in the accident with, she grabbed the phone from him. She said, no, let me talk to your dad. She told me, she says, I just want to tell you that, I ran into your son. He was just sitting at the light, waiting on the light to change. And I ran into him. And she says, he jumped out of the car, which surprised me because I was afraid. But he opened up the door and he asked me if I was okay. And she says, oh, I felt so good when he said that because most young people, they would have wanted to jump on me. And she says, you have a great son, and I just want to let you know that I never met anybody that made me feel so good. And that was like the story of his life. He was always trying to help somebody or making sure that the person was okay. That's the type of son he was.
Great character, great guy, very loving. Did whatever it takes to help someone else out. The way we grew up together and always being competitive against one another. He basically built that competitive edge in me as far as sports-wise and stuff like that. He was just basically one of the guys that helped mold me into who I am today.
He was really fantastic in sports. And he played football and ran track. He wrestled, and that was a surprise to me because none of us wrestled before.
We always thought he was so small and so skinny to wrestle. And like my uncle said, a lot of people did find out that it's not about size in wrestling. It's more of a technique, so a lot of people would challenge him, especially the older guys. They would challenge him and he would always win. Him being the smallest player, it seemed like on every team, he still stood out as far as personality-wise, character-wise. He coached a lot with my uncle, like Little League baseball, basketball.
He went to Cerritos College, played football there. But I more so think that his drive was more so just helping other people out, making sure other people was happy, as well as fixing cars.
He was into fixing cars up and putting nice paint jobs on them and, had the nice rims. And
he would be the one in the nice car, the loud music, so everybody knew that that was my brother. All the girls liked him. Even after everything happened, everybody was like, surprised it was my brother, being that he was, like I said, lending a helping hand to anybody. He could see somebody walking down the street, he'd give them a ride home.
I went to school at USC, and whenever I needed to come home, no matter the time of day, he would always come pick me up, make sure I got home with the family and stuff like that.
It was the best day of my life when he was born. My first son. The worst day of my life was when he was killed.
On September 26th of 2004, Detective Fournier and I were assigned to investigate the shooting death of Willie Pegram III. Willie was a young man, approximately 22 years of age. He and his 3 friends went to the city of Hawthorne, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, to a street called Crenshaw Avenue. On the weekends, car clubs, young people in cars, car clubs, it's a gathering place where they cruise up and down the avenue. At one point, there was a DUI checkpoint that was on Crenshaw Boulevard. The people all decided to go to the parking lot of Lowe's department store. There was approximately 100 cars in the parking lot. People are mingling. There was approximately 200 individuals there. At one point, Mr. Pegram was with his friend, and they were slowly cruising down one of the parking lot aisles in his green El Camino car. At one point, the suspect walked in front of Mr. Pegram's car, walked over to the driver's side, leaned in the window and asked him, "Where are you from?" In the street world, that is a direct challenge. The individual is asking him what his gang affiliation is. Mr. Pegram, not belonging to any gang, out there that evening to socialize, to actually meet young ladies, told the individual, "I'm not from anywhere." He and his friend continued driving south through the parking lot towards the front of the store. And at that point, in essence, Mr. Pegram was trapped because of the logjam of vehicles. Witnesses state that the suspect came back, pulled out a handgun, leaned inside the window, and shot Mr. Pegram several times. His friend was able to escape safely out of the window of the passenger car. Witnesses say there was pandemonium at that point. Fatally wounded, Mr. Pegram slowly had his foot on the gas pedal. The vehicle ended up crashing against a light pole in the parking lot. Witnesses last saw the suspect running away with 2 other individuals north through the parking lot towards 120th Street. Mr. Pegram was pronounced dead almost immediately. He had suffered approximately 10 gunshot wounds. I have been doing this job for several years and have made countless death notifications. This particular one was probably one of the most impactful things that I have ever personally gone through. I still think about it. Upon telling Mr. Pegram that his son had been murdered, he had a violent reaction. He immediately bent over at the waist as if he had been shot himself. The pain was quite evident.
And still, I deal with that pain. Deal with a lot of pain.
His son, without a doubt, was not a gang member. His son lived an impeccable life, and he was out on a Saturday night in his car with his friends, not drinking alcohol, socializing. And for someone to senselessly take his life and destroy his life, but also the life of his family, including Mr. Pegram, is devastating. On September 26th of 2004, Willie Pegram was senselessly murdered in the Lowe's parking lot after an evening of hanging out with his friends. During the course of the investigation, we learned that approximately 1 week prior, there had been a shooting nearby. In that shooting, the suspects were driving a blue El Camino. Informants that came forth stated to us that this was a case of mistaken identity. Mr. Pegram was in a green El Camino. However, he was young, African-American. He fit the profile of what the individuals possibly believed was the suspect. As I said, he and his friends had no gang affiliation. One of his friends had come from college that weekend. In fact, this was only his second time going to that area. It was not a gang-infested area. It was not a bad part of town. It was young people getting together and socializing.
Since this happened, nothing has been the same, nothing at all. It's just like a hole in my heart. I don't think anybody will ever understand what they've done unless they actually go through it.
I mean, it would be a major blessing. I do believe in my Lord Jesus Christ, and I do know that it says that he would never put anything on us that we couldn't handle. You know, I deal with this the best way that I can right now, but it would feel so good to know that, you know, somebody came forth, you know, to get that person off the streets so that he won't break up another home like mine. It just destroyed us. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
It affected us so much that we started doing a barbecue. We needed to do something in remembrance of my nephew, so we started the Wheels Day Barbecue, and we've opened it up not just the remembrance of his passing, but the remembrance of others that lost loved ones.
My nephew, Darnell Bean, was playing football for the USC during the halftime. I believe that was the Rose Bowl. You know, I saw him on TV. He called me, he told me, hey, I'm going to be on TV. I want you to look. So I said, okay, you know, I'll make sure and watch it. And I'm watching it, and he had a tattoo. And he told the story about his cousin, how he was shot. And he said that he got the tattoo so he could carry him, you know, everywhere he goes. And I ended up getting the same tattoo that my nephew had, so that I could also carry him everywhere with me. I could look down and I could say, I love you.
If we could find out what happened to little Willie, it would mean the world to me. His passing was a few years ago, going on 8 years now, and we still have no idea the reason why it happened. And if we were able to find out who did it and why they did it, it'll bring us some amount of closure.
We know that there was at least 100 people out there. There were several people that were within 15 feet of what happened. The suspect is described as an African-American male, approximately 5'9", 160 pounds, in his early 20s. He was wearing a yellow do-rag, and at that time he had one of those NASCAR jackets with M&M figures on it, a very unique looking jacket. With the passage of time, we're hoping that individuals that were there at the scene have now grown up. Perhaps they have children of their own, and now they're willing to step forward and tell us what they know about the incident. If anyone has any information that can lead us to the suspects, please notify me, Detective Richard Tomlin, or my partner, Sergeant Luis Nunez, at the LA County Sheriff's Homicide, phone number 323-890-5500. Or you can contact Crime Stoppers. We appreciate any phone calls, and you can remain anonymous. It is quite obvious that Mr. Pegram loved his son deeply, that he lived for his son, and that if there's anything we can do to bring him some type of peace, would be greatly appreciated.
Willie Pegram never got to graduate from college. He never got to be a father, and time has not eased his family's pain. So they need your help. If you remember this crime, if you've heard anything since, please call Crime Stoppers. The number is 1-800-222-TIPS, or you can log on to lacrimestoppers.org, where you can learn how to text or even email your tip. It could lead to a cash reward.
On October 27th, 1999, Herbert Pryor, a 83-year-old World War II veteran, went out for his nightly walk in Hawthorne, California, where he lived. Mr. Pryor resided in the 13800 block of Yukon Avenue in the city of Hawthorne. According to his daughter, he had some recent knee issues and presumably cut his walk short. When he returned to his house, he found that at least 2 people, according to witnesses, he confronted them breaking into his home. They had removed the screen and broke the window. There's evidence to support that he confronted these individuals, at which time these cowards basically beat this 83-year-old man to death. This man put up one heck of a fight. He was a tough guy. They used a brick, presumably the hands and fists. He sustained great damage. According to the doctors, Mr. Pryor's bone structure separated from the skull itself. When we saw him in the hospital, he was really almost unrecognizable. He had eye patches on because he sustained some injuries to his eyes as well. Numerous lacerations all over his body, incredible swelling. It was determined that a ring, a men's ring, size 8 onyx stone that he always wore was missing. He probably didn't give it up easily, and these cowards, again, they decide to pummel him with a brick, stomp his hand, break the bones in his hand, and his hand is just a big swollen mess. There was blood all over the backyard, concrete patio area. Mr. Pryor, after being assaulted, incredibly sustaining all these major injuries, somehow managed to walk down the entire length of his driveway, which was a fairly lengthy driveway, and make it to the street corner where he held on to a telephone pole. Witnesses that were passing by at the time, because it was 4 days before Halloween, thought it was some Halloween gag, that someone was dressed up with fake blood, and we have information that witnesses were driving by. And finally, someone stopped and realized that this was real. He fell into a coma and never regained consciousness. He survived until January 1st of 2000 and succumbed to his injuries. We utilized some bloodhound dogs and took some scent from evidence recovered at the scene, and the dogs went to an apartment complex north of the location on Yukon Avenue, to an apartment complex called the Casa Grande Apartments. We're still trying to ascertain and determine whether or not the suspects were residents of that location at the time. Additional information showed 2 houses north, some fresh blood drops were on the sidewalk, continued north into another set of apartments that was located on the west side of the street called the Via d'Este Apartments. The blood went into the foyer area. It seemed like the person was unable to get into a locked door to enter the apartments and then left. We have never been able to conclude whether or not this person's blood and this person who was injured was a direct result of this assault on Mr. Pryor. We've had some information that Hispanics and or Samoans may be involved in this crime. If anybody fitting those descriptions that may have bled into that Via d'Este apartment or lived over in the Casa Grande Apartments that may have talked about this crime, any information at all will help. And he was a loving father. He had several grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He was a World War II veteran with the United States Air Force, a second lieutenant. And since being a homicide detective for the last 13 years, this is probably the most heinous case I've handled. The fact that Mr. Pryor was an 83-year-old man and how brutally beaten he was has stayed with me the entire time. I have kept his case file in my car the entire time, hoping for any leads that may come in to give this family some sort of justice. We are really seeking the public's help. Anybody who has any information at all regarding this case, to please call the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau at 323-890-5500.
Herbert Pryor can no longer speak for himself, so his family needs you to speak up. Call Crime Stoppers. The number is 1-800-222-TIPS. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Crime Stoppers Case Files. Remember, we are here every week with more crimes and more families needing answers. These are your neighbors. This is your community, and you can make a difference.